hiker. She had a satellite phone, called for help, and saved my life. Today, I'm healthy and never out of touch because the satellite phone store makes it affordable to be connected anytime, anywhere. The satellite phone store gave me an Inmarsat iSat-2 satellite phone free. And the monthly plan is less than I spend on coffee every month. You can have one too while supplies last. Call the satellite phone store, 877-705-8839. Remember, the satellite phone store, 877-705-8839. thesatellitephonestore.com.
Hi, this is Matt Ray for MyPillow. Look, I'd forgotten what a good night's sleep was like. Then I got a hold of MyPillow. I used to wake up with neck and shoulder pain. I thought it was the new normal. But after one night of using MyPillow, my neck and shoulder pain is gone, and I'm sleeping comfortably through the night. MyPillow's patented interlocking fill conforms to your personal sleep needs. It's guaranteed not to go flat. It's washable, it's dryable, and it's made in the USA, not to mention the 10-year warranty. Try it risk-free with a 60-day money-back guarantee. What have you got to lose besides back pain and shoulder pain? Right now, America's First News has a great deal. Try it for yourself. Call now. You'll get 50% off a 4-pack. That's 2 premium pillows and 2 travel pillows. Call now. 800-716-4835. Use the promo code RAY, R-A-Y. That's 800-716-4835. Use the promo code RAY.
Wouldn't you love to have a really sharp memory? More than ever before, people of all ages are struggling with memory problems and brain fog. Whether your poor memory is age-related or due to the effects of chronic stress, you can now improve your memory while reducing stress with the dietary supplement Conmen Clever. That's right, you get 2 products rolled into one. Some ingredients in Conmen Clever enhance memory and help retain newly learned information more effectively, while other ingredients in Conmen Clever reduce stress by maintaining healthy levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Conmen Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. To sharpen your mind and feel calm and centered, try Conmen Clever for 2 months. You'll love the way you feel and think. To order Conmen Clever, call 1-800-728-9948 or visit CommenClever.com, 1-800-728-9948 or CommenClever.com.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
We are the contact for alternative research topics. The Planet, KGRARadio.com.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The fact is, from the beginning of this, we have recognized that this is a tough business. It is difficult, that it is dangerous.
President Roosevelt said in a statement today that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, from the air.
Let's see, where should we start? The Gulf of Tonkin incident?
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Now that took us into war in Vietnam. They've now admitted it was a lie.
What does that have to do with 9/11?
That shows that we will lie to go to war.
Just a few moments ago, something believed to be a plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
An incredible plane crash into the World Trade Center.
We should take nothing for granted.
9/11 was an inside job.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We will interrupt all programs to give you latest news bulletins. Stay tuned to this station.
You're locked in to the Richard Dolan Show right here on KGRARadio.com.
To find the latest on Richard, visit his website at richarddolanpress.com. And now, back to the program.
I'm Richard Dolan. We're back here with Kathleen Marden. And Kathleen, you have your own website, which is kathleen-marden.com?
That's correct. And I have many articles that you can read at no charge. I also have a bookstore with autographed copies of my books, and also a listing of the events this year where I'll be speaking, and I'll be posting some for next year as well.
One thing that I've always loved and appreciated about you is anytime that you're interviewed or on a camera, you always are professional. You represent this field, this discipline so very well. And I have no doubt that there are millions of people who appreciate that. This subject that we investigate, this subject of UFOs, is so easily ridiculed and so easily pushed to the side and to the fringes of our society that we need people to recognize that this is a serious subject and it needs to be taken seriously. We need people who are willing to stand up for it. And you're one of those people. And I absolutely know there are millions of people who see you on YouTube and see you on television and read your books who appreciate the logic and the seriousness and the passion and the heart that you bring to this subject. And I just want you to know that I appreciate it. So I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate your observation.
Thank you. So we were talking, and I was thinking about abduction or contact cases that involve a great deal of, that have evidence of a higher level than just one person giving an interesting story, which is the majority of these cases, I think. And many of them are believable. But what about cases where there are multiple individuals or higher levels of evidence as you see it? Are there any that you could speak to?
Yes, I investigated a case, and Mufon also investigated this. This is a case in the Southwest at an airport, a small airport, owned by a commercial pilot. And they generally don't give licenses to nutcases. And so most of the investigation had already been accomplished when he contacted me for the first time. And I was busy with the alien abduction files, writing that, speaking about that afterwards, promoting it. And so we talked briefly, and then he left. And then about a year later, he got in touch with me again, and he started to send me his evidence. What happened is that he had never had any of these UFO sightings before in his life, no interest in UFOs, but he was living in an apartment at this airport, and one night he heard some people outside the hangar, out by the runway, and he went outside to see what was going on because he was always worried about teenagers being there vandalizing his equipment.
Ah, okay.
He went outside, and there were a number of people out there pointing toward the sky, saying UFO. And so he looked at it. He said he saw many, many and very intense small lights, that he'd never seen anything like that before. He said that he could identify anything in the sky. And he became very, very interested in this. And then he would go out looking for UFOs. He even tried to contact them by using laser lights that he would shoot into the air. He would go up into his tower, and eventually he was able to make contact. And he got some very good photographs of UFOs.
Now, when you say eventually, so it would seem as a direct result of his efforts? Is that really what
it does appear that it was a direct result of his efforts.
Okay.
He thought that it was. Mufon's field investigators went to that airport. They wrote in their report that one night they were there investigating, and they had a fairly close encounter with a flying disc that was obviously not ours. It was silent, it was disc-shaped, and it was within 1,000 feet.
Interesting.
Yes. So that was in the Mufon report. The investigation went on. Eventually what happened is he started to be taken. And he did not like this at all. And so he initially thought that he could sit down and have a conversation with these astronauts from another planet. He was thinking, nuts and bolts, here we are.
Right.
We have these metallic craft and these astronauts, and we'll have a conversation and they can tell me what they're doing here. Well, it didn't turn out that way at all. He started firing his weapons at them when they would come. He said,
as in like guns, things like this?
Yes.
So he would
guns.
Would he sleep with a loaded gun?
Yes. He would go out onto, when he saw one hovering in the sky over the airport, he would fire his gun. He said sometimes he heard the bullets ping off the UFO. Other times he didn't. He was seeing different types of craft. And one of these craft resembled the farmer's hat type of craft that was reported a lot during the 1950s.
Yeah.
And it would dive into the ground and simply disappear without a trace. So that was very perplexing to him. But I was very interested in this because I was interested in maybe the interdimensional nature of all of this as well. And so started taking more and more reports from him. He, one night, woke up in the middle of the night and decided to talk to his sister who worked overseas. And he was on the phone with her, had a conversation, hung up the phone, and for some reason, he just opened the door between his apartment and the hangar, and there standing down in the hangar were 3 small white entities. They looked something like grays,
Right.
dressed in metallic silver uniforms. He said they were wearing like cowboy roper boots.
This is a hangar at an airport?
At his airport.
At his airport.
Yes, this is a commercial pilot who owns an airport.
I just want to say, just to interrupt you, but if I were to have a next-door neighbor who were to tell me this story, I might think that they were a little bit unhinged.
Yes.
Like I would think, there's something wrong with my neighbor. I don't know if I think I'll grow the hedges a little taller this coming year. But I'm assuming there was something about this man that when people worked with him, they said he's sane. They said he's normal psychologically.
Yes, not only that, but there were witnesses to the UFOs. There were witnesses to some of this activity. One of them was a former state trooper in Texas that I talked to, who confirmed this. Other family members confirmed this as well. They had these observations.
What were they confirming specifically? What were they seeing in particular? These other witnesses.
Paranormal activity and UFO activity. And even a time slip.
Really? Could you describe that a little bit? That's interesting.
Yes, where he and his mother are looking out the window of the hangar. And this is after the family has had an intervention with him and think he needs psychiatric help because of all of these reports that are being made. And he said, just please spend the night here and let me prove to you that this really is happening. They look out onto the airport at night, and instead of seeing the lights from the airport, the runway, they see a grassy savanna and what appear to be mammoths grazing out there.
How bizarre.
How bizarre, yes. And light orbs of different colors. And some of these light orbs were gray and appeared to have goat faces inside of them. I have photographic evidence from him of, and I showed it yesterday, of some kind of entity that appears to be in the process of materializing. That he was standing in the window of his office, shooting photographs out the window toward a strange light outside. And this entity ran toward him very rapidly. He was able to get a fairly close-up picture of this. It almost looked like a mantis being in the process of materializing.
Well, that's fascinating. And as odd as the time slip might appear, I'll just share a story with you. You may know this, but you may not. Among all the greatest historians of the 20th century, one of my favorites and one of the greatest was Arnold J. Toynbee. Toynbee was a genius, and he was like Mozart of historians. He was that level. And he spoke about an experience he had as a young man in Greece. This is over a century ago. And he was overlooking the scene of an ancient Greek battlefield. And he wrote about this later and said, I actually saw the battle take place. And it had this mystical sound to it that historians particularly, well then as now, would really not want to recognize. But Toynbee was adamant. Like this wasn't just some vision in his own mind. He was adamant that he saw this with great clarity. So maybe that was a time slip as well. And
Yes.
These things may indeed
I've
be part
interviewed
of our
other
world.
people who believe they are experiencers who have reported this. So
Yeah, it's fascinating.
it is
So
interesting.
What else happened with this particular pilot? Was there any other follow-up with his experiences?
Yes, he eventually started sleeping with his gun, bullet in the chamber.
Yeah.
And one night he awakened, and there was this non-human entity in his room. Didn't resemble any of the common extraterrestrials that we think of. It wasn't a gray, wasn't a reptilian, wasn't an insectoid type creature from his description of it.
Right.
He, with all of the strength that he could muster, lifted that gun up and fired it and hit it in the abdomen. It then disappeared in a blinding blue flash of light. He immediately got out of bed,
Right.
and he found a yellow substance on the floor and on the foot of the bed. Unfortunately, I wasn't investigating it at this time, and I only have his report of that. We don't have the physical evidence.
So the round that he fired was not lodged into the wall of his home or anything like
It
that?
blew a hole through his closet door.
Oh, there was
and
a
through
hole
some
there.
clothing. Yes.
That was there.
Yes.
So he fired that. Wow. I have another friend, and I'm sure you know many people like this, he's had so many ongoing experiences, and he is, in my view, completely reliable, 100%. It's bizarre. Like, he'll just have so many of these events that have happened again and again, and they go on to this day, and he's in his 60s now, I think, and he's had them his whole life.
Yes.
And it's often disturbing, but I don't think he knows what to do about it.
Something that I discovered about this man's experiences is that this airport was located on what had been Native American land.
Okay.
And there does appear to be both positive and negative activity there. A lot of negative activity that reminds me of the Skinwalker Ranch. This seems to be another location where this is happening. He had photographs of looked like a dog face or a wolf kind of creature that other experiencers have sketched that was damaging, that was very frightening and destructive. And so I have that photograph. Also, he was seated in his office, he said, one evening just doing some paperwork when he felt this burning across his chest. He felt this happening. He got up, he looked in the mirror, and there he had bleeding, deep scratches on his chest. This became so frightening that he ended up boarding up the windows in not his bedroom, but the guest bedroom, affixing chains bolted to the wall, putting on handcuffs before he went to bed at night. That was the only way he could sleep. His health was deteriorating rating.
Yes.
And he ended up abandoning that airport and moving to another location just to get away from this.
Did that succeed?
It did succeed, yes.
Doesn't it seem so interesting that so many aspects of abduction phenomena or experience or phenomenon do seem parallel to stories of other types of paranormal activity? So, for example, you mentioned in the case of this pilot, he was essentially inviting in these extraterrestrials, right? He wanted to make contact.
Yes.
And one hears about this, and it's always a warning in the paranormal world. I've met some of these ghost hunters, and they all tell you the same thing. It's like, don't invite the paranormal into your life, because it's like asking them to come into the door, and you don't know what you'll get. And in this case, this pilot seemed to do the exact same thing, but with extraterrestrials.
Well, I don't even know for certain that they were extraterrestrials.
True, right.
I can say that because the characteristics were different. This wasn't generational contact, and it ended when he left that property. So it seemed to be something about that property that, he invited this in, and it started to happen. So it's very perplexing. And I went to Paul Eno. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
Okay. He's a highly respected paranormal investigator.
Out of New England.
He helped me a lot on this case. He's from Rhode Island.
Yes.
Yes.
Fascinating. Yes, we've, because you and I frequently are at the Exeter, New Hampshire UFO conference and festival they have there.
Yes.
And Paul Eno is usually there with his son, and they're both really wonderful.
They are.
Both very knowledgeable individuals about this subject.
Mm-hmm.
So what was I just about to ask you now? I was thinking the paranormal connection is interesting for sure. And I wonder if we've got about 8 minutes before we get to the break here. I think it's about that. Did you want to talk a little bit about your own particular experiences? This is something that you haven't really discussed very much in the past, and you did broach the subject here at this conference this weekend. Is this something that you're willing to talk about a little bit for audiences?
I can say a few words about this. I believe that it happened when I was 17 years old, when my aunt was doing a series of psychophysics experiments with scientists to attempt to telepathically bring a UFO to land on my grandparents' farm. There is evidence that one did land there, and my mother and I had memories of finding ourselves on a craft, in an alien environment, on a table.
Mm-hmm.
This was investigated secretly, confidentially.
Right.
In the past, I didn't want people to know about this. My aunt encouraged us not ever to make this public because of the ridicule that was heaped upon her by disinformants, very nasty people.
Absolutely.
Who wanted to cast her in an entirely different light than the person she really was.
Philip J. Klass.
Absolutely. He started it. He was the person who rewrote the story of what had happened to them, introducing false information and speculation.
He was
where
a fundamentally dishonest man, and it just has to be said. He also did smear campaigns against Stanton Friedman, which I'm sure you know about.
I do, absolutely.
James McDonald famously really just trying to destroy McDonald's career.
And Alan Hynek, too.
Hynek, that's right.
Absolutely. And in fact, the book that Stanton and I wrote most recently is Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based upon years of archival research that we did. Visited Philip Klass's archive, Donald Menzel's archive, and also Edward Condon has the archival collection there at the American Philosophical Society. I made several trips
in Philadelphia.
This is right. In Philadelphia.
Right.
And so our book is on the history of government involvement in the investigation of UFOs, the major studies they have done, their findings, their decision to cover up their findings, and those individuals who were the disinformants involved in the cover-up, their modus operandi, and how they treated every major, best evidence, most credible case in history, as long as they were alive.
Fascinating. I think I should be getting my own copy of that book. I need to buy that. But then as far as your own experiences, that's all that you're able to remember or discuss?
I will say that for many years I wanted to know, is this real? Are my memories of this happening real? My mother remembered the same thing, but still I wasn't willing to accept it myself. I had to have substantial evidence that all of this was real. And over many years, I collected substantial evidence. I took part in a couple of academic studies, and I even took the American Personality Inventory. And on the American Personality Inventory, I hit the target as having UFO abduction syndrome, where I have the emotional signature and even the secret knowledge of having had this experience.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and I think many of us are thankful that you are coming out, as it were, to talk about this. 2018 is a different time than the 1990s or 1980s, and it does seem that there's been a sea change at work culturally in our society to bring out a little bit more acceptance of this subject and the reality. And I think there's a lot of younger people, younger generation, that seem to be growing up with this phenomenon as a reality. I've got two kids. Well, they're not kids anymore. They're 22 and 20. And now, admittedly, they grew up with the subject through me, but the sense that I get from them and their friends is that, sure, people talk about this, and it's not the pariah subject that it would have been in prior generations. So I think it's great that you're willing to talk about your own experience. And plus, I think people who have had experiences are probably very grateful that you are willing to do it, because, again, you're the kind of person that they want representing them. They want someone who is strong and is logical and scientific and intelligent and compassionate and good. They want you out there with them. So I think, I have a feeling that as time goes by, you'll probably continue to get lots of thankful correspondence from people for exactly, what you've just done.
And I did set up Mufon's experiencer research team when I could no longer talk to the experiencers. I simply didn't have the hours in the day. We now have 16 individuals on the experiencer research team who work on a daily basis talking to experiencers. And the people on my team include a medical doctor, retired orthopedic surgeon, 2 retired psychotherapists, another active psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and experiencers. So we have a knowledgeable team. Some are individuals who are just coming into this, and they're undergoing training as well. But we have a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge and have done a lot of investigation.
We're going to come to a break in a minute or two, but I'm interested in your thoughts on two things. So where abduction research has gone over the years, like where we were at when your aunt, Betty and Barney Hill, your uncle and your aunt, had their experience way back in 1961, 56 years ago, more almost, and how, the journey it's been for us as a society and as researchers to understand what were they experiencing then, and all through the years of people like Bud Hopkins and Dave Jacobs and then John Mack, and now you and people like Yvonne Smith and Barbara Lamb and other leading abduction researchers. I'm wondering if you'll be able to comment after the break where abduction research has been going all these years. And then the other thing I guess I'm wondering is if you might share your thoughts on the agendas, plural, of what these other beings might be. But we're at time for our final break, and when we come back, I'll be here with Kathleen Marden. This is Richard Dolan, Aaron KGRA.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
This is Richard Dolan, and I want to brag for just a second about the incredible authors I publish under Richard Dolan Press. Some of the most innovative and well-researched books in the field of UFOs and beyond that you'll find anywhere in the world. Incredible UFO encounters, the cover-up, the experiences by ordinary people, Russian UFOs, psychic phenomena, consciousness, synchronicities, and owls. Yeah, it's all there, and it's all fascinating reading because I would never publish a book that isn't. To learn more, go to richarddolanpress.com.
There are many sounds in your day-to-day life. There are sounds that wake you up. Sounds that make you smile. Sounds that energize you. And sounds that help you relax. But there are some sounds that can alert you to danger and can help save lives. Wireless emergency alerts, now on many mobile devices, use a unique sound and vibration to bring you information about severe weather events, Amber Alerts, or other emergencies in your area. With critical information from local sources you know and trust, you can be in the know, wherever you are. For more information, visit ready.gov/alerts. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Now streaming free on Amazon Prime from UFO TV, the movie Packing for Mars.
The space program, as most people understand it, is completely a front.
There's a whole nother reality going on out there.
There really is another cost to the human race.
People go through their lives on autopilot all the time. But what people don't realize is that they need the truth.
See the movie Packing for Mars, now streaming on Amazon Prime from UFO TV.
Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, kgraradio.com.
Dolan and KGRA. And Kathy, it's been so much fun chatting with you about your research and your thoughts on abduction, contact. I'm curious about if you feel that the current, like, where is abduction research today, and where have we gone? I remember years ago talking with Bud Hopkins, and Bud had a very, very well-defined view of this phenomenon that we are dealing with. And his attitude about these beings was that they were not truthful, they were not to be trusted. that there was a great deal of negativity involved in the agendas that they had. Dave Jacobs, who worked very closely with Bud, I think has very, very similar ideas. John Mack was always a little different. But, that was the earlier generation of abduction researchers, and now there's new people doing this. You're one of them. So what's current theory going on in abduction research as far as the nature of these beings, and what are your thoughts about that?
Well, in the beginning, of course, there were, in the 1950s, the human-looking, non-human entities, but human-looking, and most of the people who were claiming to have contact with them were debunked. They were called frauds. These non-human,
you're talking about the early contactees.
Yes, like George Adamski, for example.
Right.
I've done some study of this, and it appears that some of them were having these highly spiritual experiences. I found that they were people who meditated, and I found that today some of these deep meditation people are able to have communication with these entities that claim that they are extraterrestrials. The interesting thing that I find is back then they were claiming to come from our solar system. Maybe they were from Venus or from
Meditation
Neptune.
makes a difference, though, doesn't it? Meditation definitely makes a difference.
It does make a difference. I think it increases your vibrational frequency and expands your consciousness. And what we're hearing today, it's still taking place, but they're claiming that they're from out there in our galaxy, that they're from Zeta Reticuli, or they're from the Andromeda constellation, or
Pleiades.
The Pleiades, or Arcturus.
Right.
And so they're no longer claiming to be from our solar system. Is this the same consciousness? Are they giving us this message, which is a little bit deceitful, but do they believe that we understand so little about consciousness that they have to present it to us in this way so that we will understand it? That's a question that I have.
Okay.
And I'm very, very interested at this point in the information that's being communicated to not only these deep meditators, but also to individuals on craft. I've received information on craft when I've been taken, where I had telepathic communication about what is going on here. And they said to me that they had to take tissue samples because they were testing for environmental toxicity in my tissue over time. And they needed to use families to take us generationally so that they could document this over time. So, hypothetically, maybe they took my grandmother and they're comparing my tissue to that.
Okay.
They're giving a lot of information across this type of communication that they are very concerned about our failure to be good stewards to our environment. They've done that for a very long time.
Well, this has been a dominant theme of contactee communications. Actually, when we were walking here to do this, we were chatting a little bit about your interest in Francis Swan from the 1950s, and who was a neighbor of Navy Admiral Herbert Knowles.
Yes.
And you've been really researching that, and that might be a really interesting place to talk about, an interesting theme for us, because I think people who don't know who Francis Swan was would find her story very interesting. And you've been looking into her, so would you like to tell people about her significance, and also what you learned about Herbert Knowles, her neighbor and U.S. Navy Admiral?
Well, I learned a little about this from my Aunt Betty Hill and wrote a little bit about it and captured the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. And Betty and Barney wanted to keep their story secret, confidential, but Admiral Knowles was a member of NICAP.
Yeah.
And so he knew about what had happened. He invited Betty and Barney to his home. They were very apprehensive about going to the social gathering with Merle Smith, the wife, the widow of Wilbert Smith, from Project Magnet and Project
Wilbur
Second
Smith,
Story.
a significant Canadian government employee. He died in 1962, I believe.
Yes.
And Wilbur Smith was very, very deeply involved in UFO and extraterrestrial communications, and he really knew everyone that there was to know, seemingly in Washington and on the Canadian side of things. Very involved.
Yes, and there were people who were researchers who absolutely believed this was occurring, who had a lot of information and evidence about this, and also people from the Canadian military. Mm-hmm. And so this is how Betty and Barney come to know the Knowles family.
I see.
And so I wrote a little bit about this relationship in my book, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to find additional evidence. Mm-hmm. And so when I would speak about Betty and Barney, often I would say that I was looking for evidence. I'd tried to find the family. I wasn't able to. And then at one of those conferences in Exeter, New Hampshire, Admiral Knowles' granddaughter came up to my table with a packet of information.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was information that Frances Swan had written down from her telepathic communication, but it also contained letters, correspondence between Admiral Knowles and Wilbert Smith. And
this could be quite fascinating.
Yes, it is very, very fascinating to me because, of course, Frances Swan, beginning in 1954, and I think that she might have been meditating. She read the same book that George Adamski had read before his contact experiences began, and he was meditating. And she started to receive telepathic messages from these two individuals who claimed to be the commanders of these gigantic spacecraft that were somewhere outside the Earth's atmosphere.
They were somewhere in Earth. Were they in Earth orbit, as I recall? Or maybe sometimes in Earth orbit, sometimes beyond?
I think sometimes maybe sometimes beyond.
And one was named Afa.
Afa and Ponar. P-O-N-N-A-R, I think it was. And so she started writing this down. It has been described as automatic writing, but she said that she was actually receiving telepathic messages, and she would write this as rapidly as she could. And sometimes they would go on for hours at a time. She was beginning to lose sleep over this. But she eventually took a packet of this information to Admiral Knowles' house. Mm-hmm. He read it, and it contained scientific information far beyond her level of education or understanding. He thought it was highly significant with regard to national security. He sent the packet along with a letter of endorsement to Washington. And the Office of Naval Research, the Air Force, the FBI, and the CIA all became involved in the investigation of this. I had a letter that Helen Knowles wrote to my Aunt Betty, who talked about how Washington's top brass showed up at their house to investigate Frances Swan, and how they suddenly realized that this was not received through conventional means, and then they went back to Washington. What was not in that letter that I was able to find evidence for is this did continue. And it was secret, and it was continuing through the U.S. government and the Canadian government. And so I found evidence from different sources. Grant Cameron was able to find FBI documents about what was going on in this study.
Well, one thing that I recall reading about is one of the men who went up to meet Frances Swan, I think we're in the late 50s here, or is it early 60s? I'm trying to recall, but his name was Robert Neeson, I believe, unless I'm getting my people mixed up.
There was a Commander Larson.
Is he the one she taught one of them her technique?
She tried to teach it to several people.
Yes.
And they would only hear buzzing sounds in their heads.
Right.
But she was able to teach Commander Larson's
the one.
to
Okay, yes.
to actually communicate.
Yes, and he went back to D.C. and one of the people there was Art Lundahl,
Yes.
high-level CIA who was deeply involved in everything having to do with UFOs. And isn't it true? There's different versions of this story that I've come across anyway, but one was that Larson then was doing Francis Swan's technique for engaging with AFA, or the extraterrestrials.
Yes, in front of 8 witnesses.
Correct. And at one point, AFA said, "Look out the window."
Yes.
And they did, and there was a craft there.
Yes, and I learned this from Jacques Vallée. And Jacques Vallée was given this information by Alan Hynek. And he actually wrote about it in his book, what is it called?
Is it the one that they co-authored together?
Science, Forbidden Science.
Oh, Vallée, Forbidden Science, yeah.
Forbidden Science. Jacques Vallée wrote about this, and according to what he wrote, the men then went to the window. They looked out the window. They saw this flying disc out there,
right.
And they called the airport radar control tower and said, "What do you see in this direction?" And they were told that all electromagnetic activity in that direction had been blocked. They were not able to
Very
see
interesting.
anything.
As I recall, I think Lundahl himself may years later have discounted the story. I think that there's a version supposedly from him, but I don't really know what to think about this, right? Because that clearly is a story that made the rounds.
Yes.
Back at the time, and it's quite interesting. But back to Frances Swan, if you want to just comment on her, because she's always been fascinating to me. Like, who is this lady who just somehow is getting these downloads, communications from this being? Some of the communications I recall reading were very like culturally for that time. So like one thing I remembered reading is that AFA said to her, "Oh yes, we don't have women on the ships because that would be a distraction." Like, this is actually one of the things he said to her. But like for fun, we enjoy horseback riding and hunting. Like, this is actually one of the AFA communications to her. And so that part of it made me think, I wonder what kind of cultural baggage she's like including in this whole thing.
I wonder about that as well, because the information that I have acquired is actually scientific information.
That's a little more interesting, truly, yeah.
Yes, and that Wilbert Smith and Admiral Knowles were looking at this scientifically and attempting to confirm that this information was accurate, and did find confirmation on some of the predictions that were given. They did find confirmation that the Earth's magnetic fields were weakening. The AFA said that they were attempting to repair the Earth's magnetic fields, and Wilbert Smith did find scientific evidence that this was actually taking place. So that was interesting.
Wow, very
to say
interesting.
the least.
What an interesting. That's a group of people I would love to have been able to sit down with, have dinner with, and conversation with. I went through the Wilbert Smith papers, which are in Ottawa, some time ago. In fact, I've got a good copy of them, and he was a very brilliant man, a very, very brilliant man who died way too young.
Scientific. I think he was very scientific in his approach. And I've read, I think it was on Wikipedia, that he was the most credulous of all UFO investigators. And absolutely false information. People can post anything they want.
Wikipedia is pernicious when it comes to UFOs. It's absolutely unconscionable how the editors of that website think that they can simply trash the entire UFO subject, and they do at every single opportunity. It's so ham-fisted and obvious I often ask myself, like, have they no shame whatsoever? Like, they are just so blatant in how they treat the UFO subject in every facet of Wikipedia. And yeah, they treat Wilbert Smith just terribly.
They do.
But they do that with everybody. Everyone associated with the UFO field gets the hardcore. It's not even the skeptic treatment. It's just the debunker treatment that you would expect out of Philip J. Klass's, playbook.
True.
Smear. Don't deal with facts. Just smear the opponent, and that's what they do. Unfortunately, we've got a few more minutes here for going over your fascinating research, Kathy. And I just wonder, is there anything else that's on your mind these days? What you feel are some of the more important directions of abduction or contact research? And I guess I'm still curious what you think we are existentially dealing with. Like, what are these other beings? Why do you think they're interested in us? Do you have any thoughts on this? We've got about 10 minutes or so.
Well, I think there are a variety of programs taking place here, some more benevolent than others. Some of these entities have communicated that they have been here from the beginning of time. Some even say that they've planted our seed here, and they come back from time to time to assist in our development and have altered us in the past. They say that they're here now because our technological development...
These are statements that you're getting, or that abduction researchers are getting from individuals.
Yes.
That's what you're... Okay.
Yes. And I never repeat anything if it's coming from only one person. I have to have some pretty good evidence that this probably is true.
So people who are having abduction experiences, a number of them are telling researchers like yourself that these beings are telling them they've been here essentially forever, and they have been tweaking us, modifying us for a long period of time.
And yes, and I have not revealed this information before, but with my latest research and the commonality study, I'm ready to relate that information now. And they say that our technological development is out of sync with our spiritual development. And they're very concerned that we could destroy ourselves and life on this planet, and that part of their mission now is to upgrade humans through their DNA studies generationally, and also to raise human consciousness and spirituality in an attempt to save this planet. So that's one message that's being given by those who are more benevolent. There are others who appear to have come here more recently, and they're only interested in creating hybrids and in studying our bodies and our DNA and conducting experiments on humans. And then there are the others who are even more negative, who seem to have a great interest in sex with humans, which is, to me, the most deplorable and bizarre.
It's bizarre on a species level, you would think. Why would you want to do that?
Why?
Like, what is the draw?
Why would you cross the vast expanse of space in order to torture these human beings on this planet or have sex with them? I just can't understand that, and I wonder if maybe they're not coming here from other planets, if maybe these groups are interdimensional, and could some of them be coming from the human collective consciousness and manifesting as physical and engaging in these acts with humans. So there are many things I'm exploring.
This takes us into some of the really most difficult subjects of the UFO phenomenon, because what we you spend a little bit of time delving into this and you realize it doesn't behave well. The phenomenon is not neat and clean the way one would want it when you start. That's the one thing that we can absolutely say. It just doesn't play nice intellectually. So there are all of these competing ways of understanding what's happening. Are they simply beings from another planet? Are they coming from some other dimension, however we understand that? I feel that I can understand dimensions a little bit better than I might have been able to in years past. And it's when individuals like yourself talk about frequencies and adjusting frequencies, like that gives me a way, at least conceptually, to understand how different dimensions might exist. In the sense that there could be other beings here in this room with us, but if they're in a different frequency, we wouldn't be able to perceive them or see them. I don't know that that's the case, but I could at least conceive of that as a possibility, right? That
Yes.
they're just existing in a different phase somehow, in some way that I can't understand. So, but I guess I'm just saying the UFO subject takes us into all of these different possibilities. And to me, that's one of the things that makes it so important. Like any subject that can lead people into so many leading edge, cutting edge scientific theories and possibilities, there's got to be something important and valuable about it.
I think so, and I think the direction that I'm taking now is more philosophical, consciousness studies oriented, because I want to understand every aspect of this. In my early years, it was physical evidence, the confirmation that this was actually occurring. I had lots of confirmation of that many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, my interest and my awareness has expanded, and I have moved beyond that, and am working with Free, for example,
Right.
on the study of consciousness.
Isn't it amazing? I'm sure we could share all of our experiences and we would have the same reaction. In other words, when I started delving into this about 25 years ago, what I have seen is that this subject has pulled me through one paradigm revolution after another. It's not just one. So the first paradigm revolution was when I had to come to terms with the fact that UFOs was a real phenomenon. And that meant that I had to rethink everything I thought I knew about history and American politics and then world politics. But then it didn't stop there, because I started realizing then there's a cover-up. How does the cover-up work? That's another series of mental revolutions. And then you start getting into the strangeness. Mm-hmm. And that forced me to start to rethink what I thought about reality. And I just think, like, if I'd never gotten into this field, where would I be personally? I could very well just be in some very conventional state of mind. But what the UFO subject has done for me, and I know it's had to have done this for you,
Absolutely.
is it's ripped through all of those layers of illusion. And now you're at the point, you're like a thoroughbred. You're just galloping
Mm-hmm.
and into new, like you're just constantly exploring. And that's got to be exciting.
It is very exciting. And, I had to first understand the human mind and psychology and what that can create. And then I had to do my own experimentation. Is this real? Mm-hmm. Am I able to contact one of these highly vibrating entities? Can I be in that presence? And I have actually felt this very strong electrical tingling as one of these entities in an experiment with a number of other people came close. And they felt this very strong electrical tingling as well. And I've even experimented on telepathic communication. Mm-hmm. I knew when this was occurring that I was just writing it down. And I know that immediately afterward, I had no memory of that communication, what was stated, but I had it written down. And so it makes me wonder if experiencers, when they are taken onto craft, are in a very powerful electromagnetic field. And is that the reason why they develop amnesia? Who knows?
That's really interesting. One other theory that Grant Cameron and my wife Tracy were talking about in an interview was this whole idea of left versus right brain awareness.
Yes.
And if experiencers are dealing with what we might particularly see as a right brain activity, which I think is a decent theory to work on.
Yes.
And then if your left brain's shut down to some extent, that's your logical that's the kind of the linear part of your thinking, you might have a difficult time having the memory of some of the things that you experience. And anyway, we don't really have enough time to get into that, but that's another it's an easy theory for me to appreciate. But this idea about the electromagnetic frequencies, there's all different ways that our minds are inhibited from forming memories. From what I understand, there's different types of chemicals that can prevent the formation of active memories. And we have a lot of work to go here in this subject. I just love the fact that you're going at a gallop into these new ideas. And, you know, for any of these skeptics who just are maybe listening to this for the first time, I would encourage them to take some time and before they dismiss what they think is a ridiculous subject matter, to take a little bit of time and to acquaint themselves with some of the nuances and with the real science that is behind what's going on in this subject. And I just hope that I'll be doing